Sir, I'll be starting the session, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, students. Today we have with us eminent academician, Dr. Nadeem Hasnain, sir. He is a senior fellow of Indian Council of Social Science Research. Sir is also the editor of Mano, an interdisciplinary research journal of anthropology. He's also the editor of Islam and Muslim Societies, a social science journal, and the former editor of the Eastern Anthropologist. Sir is also formerly the Fulbright Scholar in Residence and professor and head of the department, Lucknow University for Anthropology. Sir has also authored several books of prominence like The Tribal India, which is supposed to be a Bible for anthropology students. And he has also authored several books like Indian Anthropology. And more recently, Sir has authored a wonderful book called Indian Society and Culture, Continuity and Change. More recently, a book for general studies students has been authored by Sir, that is Indian Society, Themes and Social Issues, which is supposed to be one of the most prominent and relevant books for the general studies syllabus as well as the essay paper in the recent times. It is more like a one-stop solution for students when it comes to the GS preparation, and it has been written in a very lucid and delectable format for the students. And we are sure that this book will be useful for your GS paper 1 and your essay. At least one essay could be written if you have a good understanding that can be developed through the perspectives from this book. And also, the broad dimensions and the pragmatic view which is given in this book will be helpful for you in the personality test. So today, Sir will be dealing on how to decode Indian society, what should be the right perspective in understanding Indian society and the various social issues that plague Indian society. After the post-independence phenomena, what are the recent and the contemporary developments of Indian society? This will be the broad dimensions of this lecture by Nadeem Hasnain, sir, today. Welcome, sir. We from AKS IAS Academy welcome you wholeheartedly to this live webinar session, sir. Good morning, sir. Please start the session, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. Hello, everybody. And I believe that I'm clearly audible to everybody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Today, I propose to share with you my thoughts on the approach and strategy to crack questions on Indian society from the perspective of general studies. The book that Mr. Shashank, the director of AKS, was just referring to, that is Indian Society, Themed and Social Issues, published by McGraw-Hill Education, recently, about 3-4 months back. Let me confess that it was the most difficult writing assignment for me. Of all my books and publications, some of you might be familiar and maybe knowing about several of my books. But this book, when I was writing this book, that was very challenging for me, mainly because of the reason that my students who are spread over throughout the country, they have been complaining that in the general studies paper 1 on the theme of Indian society, different types of questions are being asked. And how a person who is not coming from the background of either sociology or anthropology or social work or similar disciplines can write a good answer to these questions. So they felt very agitated, and me too, I was also very agitated that such complicated questions are being asked in general studies. But as the saying goes, beggars are not choosers. So you have to cope with it the best way possible. So that is how, when I sat down and wrote this book for McGraw-Hill, it was like a tightrope walk for me, because the Indian society has been the core sector, in sociology, in social anthropology, in social work, and similar other disciplines. But at the same time, it is also very important for general studies paper. So when you look at your syllabus, you find that they gave you just 2 lines: salient features of Indian society and diversity of India. That's all. And look, so many different types of questions have been asked. So this is the book that I'm referring to. Yeah. I'm just reading a couple of questions so that to put across my point. Caste system is assuming new identities and associational forms. Hence, caste system cannot be eradicated. Comment. This is in general studies. What are the 2 major legal initiatives by the state since independence addressing discrimination against the scheduled tribes? Why are the tribals of India referred to as scheduled tribes? Indicate the major provisions in the constitution for their upliftment. And then debate the issue whether and how contemporary movements for assertion of Dalit identity works towards annihilation of caste. Now, this is a sample of some of the questions that have been asked in general studies paper on Indian society in previous years. So obviously, when somebody sits down and tries to write a book for general studies, as I just mentioned, it was like a tightrope walk, because you have to simplify all these things and minimally using the jargon or the technical terms which are used in sociology or anthropology. Because as one appearing for general studies paper, one is not supposed to be too jargonized. No, because general studies, theoretically speaking, is meant for all those people, all those aspirants who are appearing in this examination, civil services examination, who are supposed to be reasonably aware and educated about all such issues. Not from the theoretical perspective as such, but look at the questions. I mean, how can one person who claimed to be reasonably aware of Indian society can go and attempt such questions? So that was a big challenge for me. And let me also confess to you that unlike many other experts or teachers, I have this advantage of being an author as well as a classroom teacher and expert who has been involved with the aspirants of civil services for more than 25 years. So that way, I keep getting all the feedbacks from a number of my students from Hyderabad, from Bangalore, from Lucknow, from Delhi. So let me share with you as to how I try to decode it. And it will, time only will tell. And those who read this book will be giving me their feedback as to how much I've been able to be successful in this endeavor. Now let me just decode it as the first step. When we say salient features of Indian society, what exactly comes to your mind? What is the most salient feature of Indian society? Obviously, the caste system. But the story does not finish here. Caste system as well as diversity. Now, diversity also has many layers. Linguistic diversity, religious diversity, ethnic diversities, diversities of culture, like food habits, dress pattern, traditions, values, and all sorts of things. So when you take up caste, along with two other segments of Indian society, well, I have tried to simplify it by making it some sort of a 3 or 4 dimensional thing. Caste, caste societies, tribe or tribal societies, and then religious communities. So when you say caste, it will also include the issues related with scheduled castes and also with OBCs. When you say tribe, it includes scheduled tribes, their problems, their latest problems related with their forest rights and their displacement and so on and so forth. And then religious communities. So it also expects that you must be reasonably aware of different religions in India. What are those religions? And especially the emphasis should be on religious minorities, because this is the core area from this segment, which has been asked several times. Now, when you try to look at caste system, then you find that it will also involve the some of the features, important features of the caste system. Because the problem here is that though you will never be asked, I'm sure that you will never be asked a question on the theory of caste. No theoretical questions. But the problem is that how can you write a good answer on, say, Dalit identity, or say Dalit Muslims or Dalit Christians, or Dalit politics, their deprivations, their marginalization, unless you are sure about what this caste system is all about. So indirectly, you are pushed to a situation where you must have a little knowledge about what caste is all about and how to relate this knowledge with all those problems which are being asked here. And then same is the case with the tribe. So no theoretical question will be asked on tribe as to what is tribe and what are the parameters of tribe. No such questions. Question mainly on the problem that they are facing, their constitutional provisions, their exploitation and their deprivations, and so on and so forth. Same is the case with religious minorities. What has been their social, economic, and political status? What are the current issues, like the issue related with the Uniform Civil Code, the issue related with the recently passed legislative measure in the parliament on triple talaq, the status of women, such issues. And such issues have been asked in the previous years also. Now, interestingly, all such areas also constitute the segment of current affairs. So there is a very significant overlapping of all these topics along with current affairs. So if you are fairly equipped to handle this question in this perspective, then any other question related with current affairs, but not directly related with the salient features of Indian society, may also be attempted by you successfully. So very briefly, let me discuss with you the strategy that I try to develop on the basis of the feedback that I've been getting from my classroom students. First, you must develop a holistic or comprehensive understanding of Indian society and its components. What is caste? What is caste system? How caste system has been changing? What is the future of caste system? Inter-caste relations, inter-caste violence, and so on and so forth. Then the basic understanding of scheduled caste, for instance. Why certain castes have been scheduled or are being scheduled? And on the basis of my interaction with many of my students, I can tell you that many of these students are not very sure as to how and why certain castes are scheduled by the founders of the Constitution. So the strategy should be to understand all these things and develop a comprehensive understanding. OBC is also part of the same caste system. Who are the OBCs? Why this third category of the marginalized or deprived section of the Indian society have not been mentioned clearly in Constitution? Scheduled caste and scheduled tribe have been mentioned, but not the OBCs. So we must be very sure about all these things to attempt questions. Then the issue of ethnicity. You must be aware of some of the basic point or the basic features of ethnicity. What ethnicity is all about, and why and how most of the tribal groups are ethnic groups. So that is why, and that is how you will understand as to what is going on in our northeastern region. This ethnic conflict and ethnic violence. Then when you come to the religious minorities, we must be very sure about it, that the minorities and their origin, their distribution, and then a little about their history. I will give you one instance. When we look at the religious scene in India, we find that India has been a home of the followers of almost all major religions of the world. Now, these can easily be classified into two broad categories: Indic religions and non-Indic religions. Indic religions are those which originated and developed in India, on Indian soil. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all such religions come in the category of Indic religions. Then in the non-Indic religions comes those religions and their followers who came from outside and then became an integral part of Indian society. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, that is the Parsi religion, all these come under the category of non-Indic religions. So one has to be very sure about it as to how these religions interacted with the followers of those religions that originated and developed in India. And that will give you a broad idea about the inter-religious relationships and how both the categories of religion and their followers get integrated into a whole of Indian society. So that is how we have to develop some understanding. Then we should also be very sure as to what constitutes the critical triangle of Indian society. For instance, to my understanding, Indian society and its critical triangle may be explained from the perspective of these three angles. Caste, it's the most important angle in this triangle, then joint family and village communities. All these three constitute the critical triangle of Indian society. I'm not including tribe in that because the tribal people have been, till recent decades and times, have been outside the spheres of the mainstream Indian society. Now, if any change comes into any of these, then the Indian society will not be the same again. So we have to develop this perspective. What is happening in the caste system? What is happening in the institution of family? Because joint family is the most important aspect of family structure in India. And what is happening in village India? What are the issues? Why this agrarian distress? Why farmers are committing suicide? So unless you develop some comprehensive understanding of the village communities and their living, we may not be able to then handle questions the way these have been asked in the previous years. The changes coming into Indian society. Obviously, no change in the Indian society can be understood unless we have some good understanding of caste system, religion, and family. These three are very important. Besides that, as part of this strategy, well, I think that some important concepts need to be understood a little, and not from the theoretical perspective, like what globalization is all about, and that will help you develop an understanding of the impact of globalization on Indian society, how this globalization is impacting women, the Dalits, the tribal people, and on the whole, the entire Indian society. You have to develop a little understanding of ethnicity. What is ethnicity? Because unless you have some idea about ethnicity, how can you handle questions on the ethnic conflict going on in the northeastern region of India? Civil society. What is the concept of civil society? Multiculturalism. Because we have been using the concept like pluralism. But multiculturalism is a step forward beyond pluralism. Let me give you a very brief explanation. Pluralism, when we describe Indian society as a pluralistic society, so obviously pluralism is merely an acknowledgement of the fact that Indian society is not a monolith. It consists of several types of groups. That's all. But multiculturalism is not pluralism. Multiculturalism is a step forward because multiculturalism not only acknowledges this diversity, but also emphasizes upon the equal rights in the power structure of Indian society. If all these groups, if all these diverse groups enjoy equal rights in the power structure of Indian society, economic power, social power, political power, only then a society will be called multicultural society. Otherwise, it will remain a pluralistic society. So we have been a pluralistic society, but through our constitution, we are trying to be a multicultural society. And with the passage of time, I am sure that we would emerge as a multicultural society in this sense of the term. Same is the case with a concept like social exclusion. I mean, unless you develop a little understanding of what social exclusion is all about, how can you handle a question on the deprivation and marginalization of the scheduled caste, for instance? or the OBCs. So that is why and how these questions may be handled, these topics will be handled. I will give you very briefly the list of some of the topics and the strategy that I have tried to develop. It begins with the introducing Indian society and historical moorings. How the present Indian society has been formed, the formation of Indian society presently. And then come to all the important features of Indian society, diversity, in customs and traditions also, kinship, marriage, family, new trends like live-in relationship, the issues involving with the sexual minorities, LGBTs, then religion and religious minorities, women in society, the changing face of women in Indian society, village India, how village India has been changing, in social movements like the agrarian movement, farmers movement, women's movement, and different types of movements. And then the issue of secularism, communalism, and regionalism. Because unfortunately, casteism and communalism have emerged as the new face of Indian democracy. Beside that, some current social issues. In this list, you also include, I've tried to include in my latest book, issues like honor killing of young women, issue of development and displacement, how in the name of development millions of people have been displaced and what should be done for them. And then the uses and abuses of internet, the social impact of internet on our society. So some of these latest issues have also been discussed. And the initial feedback that I received from some of my readers have been very satisfying. And I've been telling them, especially those who opt for options like sociology, anthropology, social work, psychology, that in writing answers to general studies questions, you are not supposed to use jargons, minimal jargons, no technical language. Because when you write answers to the question in the general studies on Indian society, you are not supposed to write the same type of answer that you may be writing in these subjects. Because all those issues are also common with these disciplines. So that is how I have tried to develop a strategy and try to translate it into this book. Now, I think it will be an open house, and you are welcome to raise questions, doubts, queries, or any other thing.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one of the questions from Mr. Joel is, what is the difference between the issues of tribals in the Northeast and the mainstream?
I think the most obvious factor that should be counted is that in Northeast, it is not a matter of exploitation by the outsiders. It was largely the issue of ethnic identities and ethnic aspirations. On the contrary, in the central India, where 60% of the tribal people live, or in Western India, the main issue is their economic exploitation, say their indebtedness, their land alienation, how they are being displaced. That is how we differentiate between the tribal problems of Northeast and the tribal problems elsewhere.
Okay, sir. So the next question from Mr. Joel is, what about the Northeast turmoil? What could be the possible reasons for the turmoil in Northeast, sir? The social conflict per se, I think. That was the intention of the question.
We have to go back to the independence of India, because when India became independent, you know that there were Naga movement and Mizo movement, and these were not movements for demanding more internal autonomy for them. These were secessionistic movement, obviously. So the problem here is that though these movements have subsided now, I won't say that, that the problem has been totally solved, but these have been subsided, and now they have joined the democratic mainstream. But my point of view is that their ethnic aspirations have not been fulfilled. And had an anthropological approach, had the approach of Nehru's 5-year, the Panchsheel or the 5-point charter had been implemented in word and spirit, in letter and spirit, then perhaps many of these ethnic aspirations would have been solved.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Mr. Raghu. Sir, his query is, what is the difference between social issues and politico-economic issues? How do we differentiate and decode them?
I think the instant thought that comes to my mind is that when you say social, technically speaking, social structure, or in social you include everything, economy, polity, and everything. But for all practical purposes, especially for the lay persons, those who have not been groomed in the traditions of sociology, anthropology, and similar things, for them, social relates to social institutions mainly. Family, marriage, kinship, religion. While when you talk about politico-economic issues, it largely deals with either the purely economic problems or political problems, though all these cannot be totally separated. But that is how we try to differentiate.
Okay, sir. So the next query from Mr. Ajay Kumar is, what could be the possible impact of patriarchy on the position of middle-class working women in India?
I mean, I don't belong to that school which thinks that education or employment opportunities have given women the freedom from patriarchy and all those patriarchal notions and patriarchal mindset and patriarchal values. Because when you see such instances where even an IAS woman, when she is dictated terms by her husband or by the society at large, so how can you say that a woman's educational or economic empowerment, is fairly equipped to defeat patriarchy? So unless the patriarchal mindset is changed, patriarchy begins from your socialization in your family. So the parents, the larger society, the peer group, everybody, they have this responsibility of inculcating the idea of equality, gender equality, in the minds of the younger people.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, what is the impact of extended globalization on the core cultural diversity of India? Probably they're asking about the post-globalization phase impact on the core cultural diversity of India.
You know, at the very outset, let us see that the entire world is moving from heterogeneity to homogeneity, largely because of fast expanding communication. You see that almost the same type of dresses, same type of fashion in different parts of the world. So you can say that the entire humankind is moving from cultural heterogeneity to cultural homogeneity. Obviously, the globalization has impacted different societies in different ways. Like, for instance, in our case, in the Indian society, globalization has also resulted in a sense of alienation in different sections of the society. Like, for instance, a number of communities, number of groups in India think that they are losing some of their core values. They are losing something which was very dear to them, largely because of globalization. Now, how and when did we move from globalization to post-globalization? Let me admit that, well, I don't believe in this, because even now we have not completely assimilated in ourselves globalization culturally, socially, politically, and economically. Globalization is still very active. And to talk about post-globalization, well, I belong to that very old-fashioned school which says that we have still not moved to post-globalization.
Thank you, sir. So the question from Mr. Sudarshan is, what is the relationship between tribe caste continuum and Sanskritization?
Tribe caste continuum refers to a lot of continuity between tribe and caste. But in the tribe caste continuum, most of the time we see that it is not a one-way traffic. In the tribe caste continuum, the caste people adopt some cultural elements from tribe, and the tribal people also adopt a number of cultural elements from the caste people. While in Sanskritization is largely, basically, and primarily, as the propounder of the concept himself says, M.N. Srinivas, that Sanskritization refers to a process where a lower caste or a tribe or a semi-tribal group tries to move upward in the status hierarchy or in the social hierarchy by adopting the values, the lifestyle, and everything from the higher caste, that is the group that is being emulated, culturally emulated. So there is a very subtle line of demarcation. And that's a very good question. And I'm very happy that somebody thought on these lines. It's a very good question. Tribe caste continuum and Sanskritization. tribe caste continuum is largely a two-way traffic, while Sanskritization, in most of the time, we find that it's a one-way traffic.
Thank you, sir. So the next question from Mr. Joel is, how do we what should be the perspective in reading about Uniform Civil Code when it comes to polity and when it comes to social issues? Is there any difference in the preparation that we have to adopt for UPSC?
Oh, can you repeat the question?
Sir, Mr. Joel has this query about Uniform Civil Code. So when we look at it from a political dimension and when we look at it from a social dimension, what should be the difference in the perspective?
The first thing that comes to my mind, the fact that is it Uniform Civil Code or Common Civil Code? Because the Constitution uses the word Uniform Civil Code. So there has to be some subtle difference between uniformity and commonality. First thing. The second is that, unfortunately, the issue of Uniform Civil Code has been made more political than a social issue. It is true that in the directive principle of state policy, a Uniform Civil Code is there. And you said that the state has to strive to achieve this goal. But the problem here is that when it is exploited politically, our mainstream, one of the mainstream political parties that is now in power also, they have been the most vociferous in demanding a common civil code. The problem is that they have a lot of legal experts in their fold, civil servants, leaders of the civil society, all types of experts. And my question is that why they have not been able to prepare a model draft of a uniform or whatever, or common civil code, and then present it to the nation for a national debate, and then to the parliament for its passage. Since till date, to my knowledge, I have not seen any draft of a uniform or common civil code. And now the cat comes out of the bag. It means that this issue is more to be exploited politically. Personally speaking, I am strongly in favor of a uniform civil code. But my problem is that when somebody does not purchase a thing of say 10 rupees or 20 rupees or 100 rupees without seeing it, how can one accept such an important issue that concerns their life, that is family, marriage, adoption, succession? These are the 4 issues in the Uniform Civil Code. So an issue that is affecting all these aspects of one's life, and if somebody says that first you accept it, then I will show you, I have this problem here. So unfortunately, it has been more of a political problem. And if anybody is very serious, especially any party, any political party that is in power, if they are really serious, then let them come out with a draft civil code or common civil code or a uniform civil code. Put it before the nation for a free, frank and honest debate. Then present it to the parliament, and there will be millions of people who will be supporting it. Yes. Is there any more questions?
Sir,
Hello.
am I audible, sir?
Yes, now you are audible. Now,
Yes, sir. Sir, another question is like, is Uniform Civil Code implementable in a country like India with so much of diversity?
no, if you look into the debate on Uniform Civil Code, especially in the post-independence, post-constitution period, when the constitution has been framed, we find that there has been two schools of thought. Whenever this issue comes of the implementation of a Uniform Civil Code, we find two schools of thought. One school of thought maintains that since India is not a homogeneous country culturally or religiously, since customs and traditions are different, and since several social institutions emanate or emerge from religion, so it will not be prudent or not be practical to go for a common or uniform civil code. That is one school of thought. The second school of thought says that we have to frame the uniform civil code in such a manner that there is a lot of uniformity, if not total commonality, so that it contributes significantly to our national integration, the goal of national integration. So these are two schools of thought. And both these schools of thought, or the propounders of both these, supporters of both these schools of thought, have their own points. Personally speaking, again, I will go for a uniform civil code in a diverse country like India. But with the rider that minorities should always be taken into consideration first. First, you try to ascertain their views and try to make all those changes which are acceptable to them. Unfortunately, we have not made this attempt so far. And that is why we are as far from the goal of Uniform Civil Code as we were at the time of the promulgation of the Constitution.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next query is, what is the difference
Between universalization and Sanskritization from the view of Marriott and Yogendra Singh?
I am afraid we are moving to we are deviating and moving towards a very different direction now. I think we need to have a separate session for such academically oriented question related with the sociology and anthropology. So here we are not dealing with this. We are dealing with the issues related with Indian society from the general studies perspective. And I'm afraid such questions do not come within the purview of this.
true,
So,
sir?
but I would definitely welcome. I would welcome to have a separate session.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Surely we'll conduct a session soon, sir. Sir, another question from Mr. Ajay Kumar is, what are the challenges to our cultural practices in the name of secularism?
I think again there are two schools of thought. One says that every group enjoys cultural autonomy of culture, and as long as it does not, any of these customs or traditions does not violate or does not defy the constitutional provisions, or for that matter, the basic human rights, then this should be allowed. This is one. The second school of thought says that the point of view or the culture or the tradition of anybody should not be accepted as superior to the basic human rights. So I have always maintained that minority rights cannot be above the human rights. And no group, no minority, whether religious minority or ethnic minority, should be allowed to get away by saying that this is not in their religion. And this is perhaps more true in the case of gender rights. So if somebody says that this is not in my religion, still I'm not going to accept it. This is not acceptable to me. And this should not be acceptable to the Indian state also. Because nobody's rights, minority rights, the ethnic minorities' rights, or religious minority rights, they are not above the human rights. And wherever it is violating human rights of dignity, equality, and all these things, that should not be acceptable.
Thank you, sir. The next question from Mr. Kumar is caste system becoming strong or weak in India? If so, why?
Now, this reminds me of a very interesting statement by M.N. Srinivas, the best expert on the caste system. In his last book, Caste Means New Avatar, he was so disparate in seeing the caste system not declining or not getting eliminated that he made this comment in the preface of the book that Hinduism may or may not remain, but caste will. So that's a very interesting statement. So what we see is that of all the social institutions of Indian society, caste system has shown immense resilience, very resilient. When you push the caste out from one sphere of life, it enters into another. Like when we try to be more secular, more rational, more modern, then it enters into politics, caste and politics. Another phenomenon that we find is that caste as a system is dying. So I subscribe to this view. But caste as a system, like say for instance, the production system of the caste has almost withered away with the withering away of Jajmani system. We don't have the caste with the specialized castes specializing in different occupations. And one thing that is very important which has occurred is that the linkage between caste and occupation has now broken. Caste and occupation has been delinked. Now, occupation was a very important part of the caste system where every caste was assigned a particular occupation. So this system of production enshrined in the institution of caste, that has declined. That has almost gone away. But the problem here is that though caste as a system is dying, but individual castes are thriving and they are flourishing. And now there are inter-caste competitions for grabbing more and more resources. So that is a very interesting situation, and perhaps it involves a lot of discussion.
Thank you, sir. There's a question from Mr. Hemant as to where can we get the book authored by Nadeem Hasnain, sir. Mr. Hemant, the book is available in the market, or you can also order the book online, or you can contact AKS. We will try to provide you the book. So the next question is it possible that the COVID crisis, where they have said, use the terms like social distancing, has it been that it has been legitimizing the biological untouchability in India? This is a question by Mr. Amit Chakravarti.
That's a very interesting question, very interesting approach also to look at it. Being not a scientist, not a medical scientist, I'm not in a position to reply to the medical aspect of the problem. Being a student of social science, I can only say that the COVID-19, no other event in our history perhaps has been able to make such a serious dent in our value system as this COVID-19 has done. Look at what is happening. I mean, even those persons with whom you have lived for, throughout your life, who really played such important role in your rearing, your parents, your kith and kin, all these people. Now, if somebody gets infected with COVID-19, you are not willing to even see his face for the last time. Seeing face for the last time of a deceased person has been a very important core value in Indian society. And we say, no, now we have nothing to do with it. Take the body away, do whatever you wish to do. Either cremate, bury, whatever you wish to do. That is very shocking for me. So I as a student of society, I can only say that it has so much seriously dented our value system that sometimes I really tend to think that all these great values and ideas that we have been so proud of and we have been talking about all these years and taking pride seems to me just skin deep. You just scratch it and you find that from that subcutaneous area comes the same selfish person, worse than other animals. That is very shocking for me.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Mr. DMP. The migration workers going back to home is an issue to be seen as a hurdle to both industrial sector and their self-reliance too. So in this context, how to reboost confidence in the migrant workers and bring them back to work in their migrant states?
The way millions of workers have left their places of employment, the way they were treated by their employers, the way they were treated callously sometimes by the government also, government agencies also, and with great hopes and with great difficulties when they reached their native places, their villages. Many of them were in for a shock, seeing that even those with whom they have been maintaining long-term relationships, they have perhaps thought that now this person has migrated and settled down elsewhere in some industrial township or some big urban center and perhaps may not be coming back again. And a lot of issues are involved with it. Sometimes all those petty squabbles and petty quarrels related with land, petty quarrels in the sphere of inter-caste relations, all these have cropped up. So as a student of social science, I look at this problem from this perspective. Of course, many of them, I'm sure, initially I thought that not more than 5 or 10% would be going back again to their original places of employment. But now, when I go through all those reports, and especially from a number of friends who are working in the NGO sector, and they have been telling me that many of them are now disappointed after coming back to their native villages. A lot of violence has begun. Inter-caste violence has also begun. Problems of employment are there. And even I'm sure that even if some of the employers may not have been giving them incentive to come back, is still many of them would be returning, mainly because of these problems that they have been facing in their native places.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, like in the recent phenomena, we have seen the issues of mob lynching, issues of anti-racist behavior. So how do you think that there could be a possible solution to this problem, sir?
I look at this problem from two angles. One is purely from the angle of law and order. I'm sorry to say that as a society, as a country, we are slipping on the index of rule of law. In increasing number, people are just not, they are not scared of the law and punishment. That is one issue. The other is that it also represents the growing hatred of the people for each other, between castes, between religious communities. And when I see many of these videos where the lynchers, the culprits, take pride in claiming that they have done it, I feel very sad and think that perhaps this is their way of telling those people who have been lynched, or those sections of the society which have been lynched, to tell them that you are at our mercy and the law of the land and the constitution is not going to protect you. But this is a very unfortunate situation if this is true. And the way mob lynching cases have been treated by different state governments and also central governments, a section of the people in increasing numbers, they are going to believe that perhaps this may be the way those who have power in the power structure to tell the weaker sections or the marginalized ones that you accept our hegemony, our domination, be at our mercy. Otherwise, I can do anything on you, and the law and constitution is not going to save you. This is a very, very unfortunate situation. So the law and order should be tightened. The government should treat the cases of mob lynching perhaps more seriously. Now, in most of the cases, it has been treated very casually. This is very unfortunate.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in the wake of rising casteism and the rise of, assertion of various parochial identities, do you think that in India, in the near future, is there any resolution for these problems, for these issues to be resolved? The issue of rising casteism or rising parochialization of identities?
I don't have a very ready answer which maybe may cover all these things in 1 minute or 2 minutes. But the very on the cuff, I think that I will go by the familiar strategy of strengthening the forces of modernization. Modernization also involves secularization. Unless and until we move from faith to reason and rationality, the problem will continue to crop up. I will be quoting the title of Dipankar Gupta's very interesting book, India's Mistaken Modernity. in this book, he presents the thesis that we talk about modernization, but we usually do not analyze it. Like when I look at this problem, I find that India has been able to achieve a high degree of technological modernization. But what about our social or cultural modernization? And as the sociologists rightly say, or rightly use the term cultural lag, which says that technology moves faster than the social change. So obviously, we have become a technologically highly advanced society. But the forces of change in India, these have been quite weak. And I'm sure that unless the forces of modernization, which also involve rationalism, scientific outlook, and all those ingredients, look at what the founding fathers of our constitution did. Promotion of scientific outlook would be the responsibility of the state, our constitution says, in the directive principle of state policy. And look our textbooks, look our television channels, all sorts of superstitions, irrational things are being fed. So unless we develop a rational scientific outlook, we cannot hope to become a modern society.
Thank you, sir. The next question from Mr. Sridhar Nambi is there a difference between the racism in India and other parts of the world? Is there racism in India? And if so, is there a difference between the racism existent in India and other parts of the world?
Mr. Shashank, I think that let us have another session, maybe tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or some other time. I really feel mentally and physically exhausted now.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you for your time and such insightful views on Indian society and the various social issues related to it. The students as well as AKS IAS Academy thanks you wholeheartedly for your live webinar, sir. Thank you, sir. Looking forward to having these sessions with you in the near future, sir. Thank you, sir.